In the freezing rain, a girl traded crayon drawings for food. A stranger knelt beside her, shielding her with an umbrella, and quietly handed her a card that would change everything. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. The city moved like the machine, cold and efficient, churning people down cracked sidewalks and into the gaping mouths of subway stations. No one paused. No one looked. Especially not at the forgotten ones who blended into the gutters like so much discarded trash. Among the grime and flashing neon, Emma Turner sat cross-legged on a patch of dirty concrete outside a rundown convenience store. She was 11, but you wouldn't know it to look at her. The bruised shadows under her eyes, the sharpness of her elbows poking through a second-hand sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. Her chestnut hair, matted and curling wildly under a tattered gray beanie, framed a face smudged with the day's endless, uncaring dust. She wasn't begging, though. She wasn't holding out her hand or asking for mercy. Instead, spread carefully in front of her on the pavement, were drawings. Small squares of cheap paper covered in crayon colors so bright they seemed almost obscene against the city's faded palette. Gardens bursting with flowers. Sunlit castles with flags whipping in an imaginary breeze. Smiling families holding hands under rainbows. Worlds she had never known. Worlds she had only dared to imagine. The people passing by barely flicked a glance at her offerings. Their faces were hard, distracted. Eyes glued to phones, shoulders hunched against the late autumn chill. What use did they have for a child's fantasy when reality already weighed them down like lead? Across the street, inside the cracked glass warmth of Benson's bakery, Daniel Reed stirred his coffee absently, his fingers tight around the chipped ceramic mug. 38 years old, broad-shouldered in a battered leather jacket, close-cropped blonde hair already threaded with silver. He looked like a man who had seen too much and let too little of it touch him. From his corner seat, Daniel could see everything. The glint of morning sun off car roofs, the way the neon "open" sign buzzed and flickered overhead, and Emma. He told himself to look away. It was what he'd done for years. Build walls between himself and every sad story, every broken thing that didn't fit neatly into quarterly reports or shareholder meetings. You couldn't fix the world. Best not to drown in it. But as Emma carefully straightened her drawings with mittenless hands, her small frame shivering from the bite of the wind, something unfamiliar coiled tight in his chest. She still smiled. A fragile, trembling thing. When someone almost stepped on her pictures, she still offered her art to a world that treated her like a ghost. Daniel felt contempt. Not for her, but for the glittering city that had all the wealth in the world and still left children trading dreams for sandwiches. His coffee sat forgotten on the table, his fingers stilled. For the first time in years, Daniel Reed didn't turn away. The morning was colder than the one before. A sharp, biting wind chased leaves across the cracked sidewalks, and most people moved faster, heads down, collars turned high against the chill. Life had no patience for stragglers. Still, on the corner outside a shabby grocery store, Emma Turner sat cross-legged once again, a stubborn blot of color against the city's gray wash. Her drawings, a little more battered from yesterday's dust and mist, were arranged with almost ritualistic care, laid out neatly on a fraying piece of cardboard. Each one was a universe, a bold, childlike sun radiating warmth, a crooked castle standing tall against blue sky dreams, a garden so lush and bursting with impossible fruits that it almost hurt to look at. The world, however, did not seem impressed. An old woman in a heavy tweed coat paused, peered down, and barked a humorless laugh that rang sharp in the morning air. A man in a tailored suit muttered something under his breath. Emma didn't catch the words, but the sneer in his voice landed like a slap. Emma flinched reflexively, her small fingers gathering her drawings closer to her chest for a moment. But she didn't leave. Her pride, battered but unbroken, kept her spine rigid and her chin tipped defiantly upward, even as tears pricked at the backs of her eyes. Across the street, Daniel Reed watched. He had intended to walk past, had told himself a dozen practical reasons to mind his own business. But with every step toward her, memories battered him. Memories of sleeping on thin mattresses in overcrowded foster homes, of holding back tears when strangers looked at him with either pity or disgust. He knew that look. He had worn it. Daniel crossed the street without thinking, the weight of old ghosts pressing hard against his chest. His boots scuffed against the curb as he stopped before her. "What do you want for one?" he asked, his voice stripped of all the polish and power it usually carried. Emma looked up, startled by the gentleness. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a breath. "A sandwich?" she asked, blinking like she wasn't sure if he was real. Daniel felt something crack open inside him, an ache he hadn't let himself feel in years. He crouched down slowly, his leather jacket creaking softly, and met her wide, wary gaze without flinching. "I'll take 3, he said simply. He reached into his wallet, pulled out enough cash to cover more than just a sandwich. As he placed the bills into her trembling hand, their fingers brushed, a fleeting, accidental contact. Emma beamed at him, her smile stretching so wide it seemed to light up the concrete around her. Not because of the money, not even because of the food, because someone had seen her. And in that instant, Daniel Reed, man who had built empires and crushed rivals, realized the earth beneath his feet had shifted, and there would be no going back. The rain came down in slow, miserable sheets, soaking the sidewalks and pooling in the cracks of the broken pavement. Most people ducked beneath umbrellas or hurried into the glow of coffee shops, eager to escape the cold that seeped into bones and spirits alike. Emma Turner remained where she always was, a stubborn little figure tucked beneath the torn awning of a boarded-up storefront. Her drawings were wilting now, the edges curling, colors bleeding in slow bruises where the rain reached them. Still, she arranged them carefully, her fingers trembling from the cold, from exhaustion, from the stubborn thread of hope she refused to let die. Her sneakers were soaked through. The sleeves of her sweatshirt clung wetly to her thin arms, but her chin stayed lifted, even as people hurried past without a glance. And then, through the misty blur, Daniel Reed appeared. Without a jacket this time, without the armor of leather or business. Just a man, plain and human, his blonde hair darkened by rain, a wide black umbrella in one hand. Emma watched him approach, wary but unmoving. She had learned not to trust gestures that came too quickly. Daniel didn't speak at first. He crouched down beside her, sheltering her with the umbrella, holding it low enough that it created a small, trembling world of warmth between them, a fragile refuge against the indifferent city. "You think I'm just some guy who likes drawings, huh?" Daniel asked, his smile crooked, almost shy. Emma blinked up at him, her cheeks pink with the cold. Slowly, hesitantly, she nodded and hugged her sketchbook closer to her chest, like a shield. Daniel chuckled, the sound soft and broken in the rainy air. Reaching into his jacket, he pulled out a card, thick, heavy with the kind of weight that money buys, and placed it gently into her small, shaking hand. Daniel Reed, CEO, Reed Industries. Emma stared at the card, her brow furrowed in confusion, her fingers trembling slightly as they closed around it. She mouthed the words silently, reading them again and again as if the meaning might change. Daniel watched her with something close to pain in his eyes. Not pity, never pity, but a deep, aching understanding. "I used to sell sketches too," he said, voice rough with old memories. "Only no one ever bought mine." Emma's lips parted, but no sound came out. The realization hit her all at once, like stepping off a curb you thought was there and finding nothing but open air. In that moment, standing under a leaking awning, soaked and shivering, clutching a piece of cardboard more valuable than anything she owned, the ground beneath Emma Turner shifted forever. For the first time in a long time, the world didn't seem quite so big, or quite so impossible. There was no limousine waiting at the curb, no flashbulbs or grand gestures. Daniel Reed had made his fortune knowing when to act and when to hold back, and here, with Emma Turner, he knew instinctively that saving her didn't mean sweeping her into a gilded cage. Instead, he showed up, day after day, the same way the morning sun found even the loneliest alleyways. A brown paper bag with a still warm sandwich. A bundle of fresh sketch pads and colored pencils cradled in one strong hand. A lopsided, awkward smile that never asked for gratitude. At first, Emma watched him with suspicion, wary eyes darting up from her drawings as if waiting for the catch, the cost she knew the world usually demanded. But there was no fine print hidden in Daniel's visits, only quiet patience and small, steady offerings of dignity. He didn't smother her with promises or drown her with pity. Instead, he found a community center tucked between the brick skeletons of abandoned buildings, a place run by weary but determined artists who believed in second chances. He sat through endless forms and interviews, nodding at the right moments, letting Emma answer for herself, letting her feel the thrill of steering her own future. He found her a room, small, yes, but clean, warm, real, where the walls didn't flake away with mold, where she could hang her drawings without fear they'd be tossed aside. And Emma, once brittle and curled inward like a frostbitten branch, began to unfurl. Her colors deepened, her lines grew bolder. The bright worlds she sketched no longer felt like desperate wishes, but declarations of a life she could now begin to claim. One crisp autumn evening, the air thick with the scent of fallen leaves and distant chimney smoke, Emma stood in a borrowed dress that still hung a little too big on her small frame, trembling at the entrance of her very first gallery showing. The room was modest, a small circle of local artists and patrons sipping cheap wine. But to Emma, it might as well have been the Louvre. And at the very back, near the exit where no one noticed him, Daniel stood, hands jammed into the pockets of his weathered jacket, a soft, proud smile pulling at his mouth. When her name was announced, he clapped the loudest, his applause ringing out before anyone else's, a sound louder than the murmurs of polite appreciation. Emma caught his eye and smiled, a real smile, wide and fierce and alive. And in that moment, something ancient and hollow inside her finally, mercifully, cracked open and let the light in. Daniel hadn't saved her with money. He had saved her with faith, with the quiet, unwavering belief that she was worth fighting for, that she had been worthy all along. And for the first time in a long, painful life, both Emma and Daniel knew, deep in their bones, what it meant to be truly seen.